Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today, Andrew Cole and myself will be going over change history within the Rover ERP application. The plan is to go over what change history is, what the benefits are, how it behaved in the legacy application, as well as demoing the new features in the .NET client. So change history is a feature that records and tracks changes within the various files within the Rover ERP application. It helps to keep a chronological log of all changes, additions, updates, and deletions. It also helps to provide detailed information such as what change was made, the user that made the change, as well as timestamps. It's a great tool for audit tracking, error recovery, version control, team collaboration, as well as troubleshooting. Some examples include accidental deletion of a record or a change that was made within a file. This helps to promote transparency and accountability when there are multiple users that are making changes that have write access. It helps to comply with auditing, helps to promote better decision making, as well as version control. Some of the files that, some of the more important files that have change history built in are AP, AR, BOM, checks, cash, contacts, parts, POs, RMAs, security file, ship file, as well as vendor. So what I'd like to do now is share my screen and show an example of how change history looked like in the legacy application. So most of the changes were tracked and controlled by the program change.control. And you can see here the different files that were allowed to be tracked by change history on the top. You can also send out email addresses that would be triggered by change notices as changes were made within the records. And you can see here in part study, I have an example of a part, and the change history tab used to live within the tabs within the parts file.
Okay. We may want to hold off here. I'm not seeing the screen share. Can you try sharing your screen one more time?
Can you see it now?
Fortunately, not yet.
Yeah, sorry everyone, 1 second. Sorry, everyone. Can you see my
There we
screen?
go. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that again. So sorry, to continue where I left off, this is what change history looked like in the legacy application. Most of the changes were and settings were controlled using change.control entry procedure. You can see all the files that were tracked on the top here where my mouse is, as well as the settings for the ability to trigger notices, including email. And I have brought up an example here within part study. The change history tab used to exist here, and you can see some changes that have been tracked for this specific part number. You can see that it is tracking that the status has changed, plan group has changed, and that the part was changed via mass using parts change.e, plan group has changed. So this really shows the benefits of the communication between internal parties and trying to figure out exactly at what point did something change within the record. And we have added some new features to change.control, such as the ability to show the prior state of what the record looked like before the change had been made, as well as adding compare fields, which Andrew Cole will be demoing. So I'll hand it off now to Andrew, who will be showing a demo of what change history looks like in the .NET client.
All right, so let's see if my screen share will work.
Looks good.
All right, so we can see my screen. All right, so we are in the .NET client, which is required to have this new method of change history I'm going to show you. It's very similar, right, to what you saw. It's just we kind of we enhanced it some and made it a little easier. So one of the downsides of the old style change history that Mohit just showed is it was manually sort of built into whatever entry screen you're on. So I know maybe some of you here have asked us to add change history to an area of the system that it wasn't already a part of. And, that required us going in, manually adding a tab, doing a bunch of coding in the background. And it was a whole process. Fortunately, now with the latest upgrades, I'm going to scroll down to ACE Utilities on the left in the menu, an ACE entry, and there is a new entry here called filehist.e for file history settings. So I'm going to launch that bad boy, and here we have it. And what this is it's a full list of all the files in the system, right? So I open this drop down and I get to see all those files. And I'm going to do cust. And so it tells me, what it is, like the description. It brings us up this little table on the left here of every field, what the name of that field is, because who remembers what each of these numbers mean? I know I don't. There's a little checkbox I'm going to touch on in a second, but the big deal here is this track changes. For those of you who have recently gone through an upgrade or are in the process or maybe considering it, this will be taken. You really won't have to mess with filehist.e. We take care of it. All those default files that Mohit went over, like talked about, that already have it built in, they just automatically get this set up for them during the upgrade. And this checkbox, track changes, is telling the system, hey, I want to track changes on this file in the system. We can probably find something. Let's see, this probably doesn't track. Yeah, so AP 1099, by default, it's not a file we track. You just open that up, track changes and save, and then we will start keeping history of it. It's as easy as that versus having us manually patch in a bunch of stuff. Let's go back to my customer example. So we're already tracking changes, right? Now, going back to this grid on the left, we've got this ignore changes column. That's the word, column. And you'll see name. We don't want to ignore changes. We want to, every time someone changes a name, we want to know when that happened, what it was, and what it is now. We want that tracked. However, a good example is the AR balance. We want to ignore changes, right? Because that's going to be recorded in another file somewhere, and the AR balance is probably going to change a lot, right? So we don't want all that extra noise in the change history if it's going to be tracked somewhere else already, right? We don't need a couple of these things just because they get automatically done anyways. But this is where, maybe in your system, there's just a lot of noise around a certain field that you really don't care about history-wise. We can come in here, we can click ignore changes, and we can save. And forevermore, we don't care. We're not going to log. You can change that field, and we're not going to log that it happened in the history. But that's file hist.e. That's sort of the setup here. Let's see. Okay. So you generally won't have to come in here too often. The real meat and potatoes is where I'm going now. And that's what's changed on these entry screens. So I just launched our customer entry screen. I know my test customer is 35. Okay. So I'm on our development system. So we may encounter some hiccups along the way, but probably not. But you'll notice if we look at cust.e here along the top of these tabs, change history is no more. There is no more tab. Well, we still have it. It's just not there. It's hidden. So up along this toolbar here, file, edit, page, window, we've got this new entry called history. So if I click this open, I get two options, add edit notes and view changes. I'll come back to the notes, but for now, view changes is where we're going. I click that, it's going to launch up changehist.q. Let me hide some of these windows so we can have less noise. Changehist.q, you can launch this by itself and enter in, the file you're looking at and the record ID. It's just, it's not as handy as doing it from the entry screen, right? So if you notice, if you just sort of focus in on this table here, sort of the main grid we're looking at, if you're familiar with the legacy style change history, this will look awfully familiar, right? It's kind of the same view. One thing to note is we're not preloading all of these changes in these notes fields. That is a difference from the legacy style. This was an intentional change. Basically, if you're, what's a good example? I guess I'll just stick with my customer example. If you've got a customer who's changing a lot, like you're constantly in there changing notes, changing different addresses, maybe the rep changes a lot. There's just a lot of changes. We didn't want to launch changehist.q and have the user wait while we just loaded all that stuff up, right? It can take a while. It might not be worth it. We just want to get that screen up in front of you with the latest change loaded. And if you want more, you can either select them or you can select them all with this top checkbox and click the Show Changes button. And see, all right, so there wasn't a lot of changes there, but it took a second to load it. Now, as per old change history, we've got the date of when it was changed, right? The time. So you saw I did a couple of these while Mohit was speaking just to get some stuff in here. You can see who did it. That's me. And Vern did something and another developer over here. And you can see what procedure did it. So in this case, I was in cust.e and I made some changes to the notes. Obviously little silly ones. Vern ran some sort of routine that changed balances and things. Shoshana shipped something. But it's got that same visibility showing you what procedure was doing the change, right? And as we look, we can see the changes they're pretty much the same, but it says like, hey, the notes field was changed. It was test notes, and now it is changing the notes again, right? Wrapped, and you can see that's what it currently is. That's all I changed. This one, there was a change, a couple behind the scenes fields. You can see AR balance was changed. Right, we've got some other things. If you're going through an upgrade or have gone through an upgrade, yeah, just want to highlight this. You can see that the procedure isn't filled out. So we weren't tracking that in the old style change history, as in what procedure was changing, this data. So we just pre-filled it with legacy. That's what is converted from your upgrade. So we're not losing any history when we upgrade you. We're keeping it. We don't have as much information as we do now. So you'll see legacy versus the procedure name and the newer stuff. If you are looking for something, currently this loads and it has all the fields as compare fields. But maybe I was only interested in seeing changes that changes to the notes field. I can unclick all of these and only select what I want to find. So maybe I was only concerned with changes to notes. Alphabetical, N comes after M, that's right. So then I would check notes. I would hit words are hard. Show changes. I would hit show changes, and it would leave all these entries here, but it would remove stamp date, right? And it would only show me notes. This entire entry would be blank, right? So it kind of helps you find, if you're looking for a change to a specific field, you can drill down and just show those changes. If you want to change that default view, like maybe you don't care about everything, you can set the check marks you want and click Save Fields. And now every time you go into customer change history, it's going to just compare those fields and do that. Let's see. View prior state. This is a good one. So this is an enhancement with this new version. We've got this big button here called View Prior State. What this is going to do, so you can see this is the current version of this customer 35. I want you to pay attention to the notes field here. If I go here and I say View Prior State, it's going to launch another custody. Must not have notes there. So it's going to say along the top here, customer entry 35 on the date. I must have clicked Burns, not mine. Either way. So it shows you the date that we're looking at, the time we're looking at, and the change, right? So it's by Vern J. So I must have just clicked the wrong one that I thought I did. And you see it shows me custody as it was at that time in January of this year, right? You can see my notes are different because that's all I was really messing with. And you can actually just look, like I can go over to, do we have anything in the contact log? Oh, we do. Cool. So you can see, what was there, anything that was in this record as it was on that day. And it's read only. You can't change anything. Won't let you save. It'll tell you, hey, you can't do that. Sorry, sir or ma'am. So I'm gonna just close that down. So it's handy to look back and see. What am I missing? What am I missing? Notes, these custom notes. In the old style, you would actually type in those custom notes on the tab. Because the tab no longer exists, and we've got the change history in this separate dialog box. We had to change how that worked a little bit. No big deal. We've got this history and add and edit notes. So if I click this, I get a little pop-up, a little text thing. So change notes during demo. And I don't really have to sign my name because it's going to mark that anyway. So I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to go demo notes. And then I'm going to save this. 35 has been filed. All right. So let me just close that out. Go back to 35. Cool, we've got demo notes. I go history and I go view changes. Pop that up again. It's going to preload just this first line. And you can see I changed notes during the demo. That's what I added. You can see the notes as it was changing the notes, and again is now demo notes, which is what it currently is. So that's a little different. It's no real extra steps. It's just in a different spot. Generally, you do get a nice big window, which is kind of nice if you're very verbose in your note taking. You get way more room. And that is about it. This history option is on all the entry screens throughout the system. So once you enable a file in filehist.e, this starts working. If you try and do this on a file that is not enabled, these are just grayed out and you can't select them. And then it's just, that's a quick checkbox and a save in filehist.e, and that's all. Are there any questions? Since my part of the demo is winding down. Nobody's coming off mute. That's a good sign. No questions in the chat. That means it makes sense. I like it. Well, if there's no questions, I think.
Hey, Andrew, real quick, maybe who is not taking advantage of the new change history functionality yet, but now having seen it today, you're interested in tapping into this with the team? Maybe show of hands in the chat or however you want to communicate that through. All right, Derek, first one across the finish line. Cool. Okay. Well, we'll start there.
All right. Well, that concludes my portion. So unless any questions roll in, I think we're handing it off to Greg for a little bonus demo, right?
Yes, I want to give a quick sort of impromptu demo of our upcoming production scheduling module on the web. So let me share my screen. Is that showing up for everyone?
Yeah, I see it.
Sir.
All right, thank you. Okay, so production scheduling. Again, this is upcoming, not quite out there into production yet, but the idea here is that we would give you visibility into work orders in your system, allow for some minor editing of those. Currently, we're only exposing the ability to add notes to an existing work order. So when you are viewing your work orders on file, you can click on any of them and add notes to the work order. The really interesting part, though, gets into this scheduling tab. So what we've set up here is the ability to view a Gantt chart and to schedule operations on specific work orders. So you'll notice a drop down in the upper right. You're able to define multiple scheduling groups, which consist of one or more work centers that are defined in your Rover instance. So in this case, we have some specific operations that use groups of work centers. In the setup here, this is envisioning sort of a process that's occurring on work orders to either blend or spray dry certain materials that are being produced. So if I flip between different scheduling groups, you'll notice different work orders show up. So the key production are work orders that contain work center operations contain operations that consist of certain work centers. So that's what these, the drop down showing different work orders, that's what drives that. So then what we allow you to do is just drag and drop an unscheduled work order down into the Gantt chart. So this would allow you to kind of quickly schedule how you want those to be produced in time and gives you the ability to quickly just drag and drop and move them around. So this is sort of a draft mode here. You can make any changes you want. Nothing actually applies until you click save. You also have the ability to expand the calendar out to view wider views. If you get it to a point where it's wide enough, you end up with a scroll bar, and you can see kind of an extensive calendar view there. Let me refresh this and reset that. There's a couple, I'll have to ask for a little grace here. We're getting this ready to roll out into production and making some adjustments right now. So there's a couple things that aren't working, but I'll describe those. So if you click on an item that you have dragged down to the Gantt chart, you have the ability to change the start and end time. So this particular operation has a default of a 1 hour runtime, but I can change that here. You'll have to forgive me, it isn't actually working at the moment. But if you adjust that operation end time, that would expand the item that has been drugged down to the Gantt chart and give you a visual of how long that operation is going to run for. The other thing that is not working at the moment is add operation. So the idea here is that you could have a follow-up operation after the completion of this work center operation. So in the case that you have a piece of equipment that needs to be cleaned or modified for the next work order to be processed, add operation lets you add a subsequent operation that shows up as a visual indication that that work center is unavailable for that additional time. So that would show up as a little gray box off to the right of this item. And then as it's dragged around, it will move that additional operation. And then if you were to try to, drag another work center down here, that would not allow you to overlap those times. So again, this not quite ready for production, but we're getting pretty close here. And I think we envision a lot of different use cases for this coming in the future. Any questions? I've lost my chat window, so hopefully there's no chat questions coming up here.
I think the other thing to call out too is, having seen this, the same question applies. Anybody who is trying to manage work centers and work orders right now and just dealing with scheduling of jobs, seeing this, yeah. Great question, Amir. It'll get launched this month. I think many of you have seen we're pushing web updates weekly at this point. So the team is just putting some finishing touches in here, and then the first version will go out into production. So let's get on that upgrade.
All right, that's all I have for today.
I'd like to just bring up again, if anyone has any questions about change history, or if anyone is interested in getting it implemented, I'll be posting an email address in the chat that you can reach out to, help@zoomassist.com. And I'd also like to bring up that this is our second masterclass now. So the first one, last month, we did a demo on inventory module and cycle counting. And so if there's any topics that you would be interested in hearing us talk about, please either communicate in the chat or unmute or send an email out. I think if there are no questions, thank you again, everyone, for your time today. And we look forward to talking again next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.